The momentum that we're able to build whenever we have all of this data is just unparalleled. Here's exactly what's working from a sales and revenue standpoint, and here's exactly what's not working. Let's cut all of this out and move all of our efforts over to these campaigns that are working. That is huge.
Welcome to Go-to-Market Playmakers, where we bring you winning go-to-market strategies from the industry's best. Each episode, we sit down with B2B tech and SaaS founders, executives, and industry playmakers who've mastered the art of taking products and services to market. Whether you're scaling a startup, refining your go-to-market motion, or driving revenue growth through a channel program or partner ecosystem, this is where you'll learn the plays that work. I'm your host, Jeremy Bayless. Today's theme is HubSpot Marketing Operations. How to align your RevOps systems for effective go-to-market. I'm very excited because I'm joined by Jasz Rae Joseph today from Jasz Rae Digital. Jasz is a revenue strategist and HubSpot expert who helps B2B teams streamline their marketing and sales systems for real and measurable growth. She's got a decade of experience spanning SEO, client strategy, operations. She founded her consultancy some years ago to support scaling teams and getting more from the systems themselves. This is a fantastic conversation to really go deep into marketing operations and its role within businesses, the way that marketing operations needs to control how all of the teams and the data talks to each other as you are going to market together. So really dispelling this, marketing is doing this and sales is doing this and customer success is doing this, but really unifying and looking to understand how do we build a foundation of data with which we can get better visibility on our activity as well as spotting opportunity. We cover a lot of ground. I hope you get as much value from this as I did. Let's get straight into it. Hey, Jasz, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really excited to have you here. I'm really excited about what we're talking about today. So we're going to be getting into HubSpot marketing operations. We're going to go deep on aligning RevOps and how to align with effective go-to-market. Before we dive into the deep end, love to hear your origin story. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. So I spent my career working for big HubSpot Diamond, Platinum partner agencies and started my own marketing agency about 4.5 years ago. And we were really a full service agency for years. And as of the past year, year and a half, as you know, I don't have to tell you, the market has shifted quite a bit with the rise of AI, the drop of organic reach, and I felt like we needed to shift to better serve our clients. We just weren't seeing those huge wins on the content marketing side that we had been seeing 4 years ago. And where we were seeing wins was in this HubSpot support, sales enablement, RevOps world. And so we really decided to lean in there. I always had clients in that space because it was my background. I worked for HubSpot agencies for years. But within the past year and a half, we really decided to double down on that piece of the puzzle for our clients. And we've just been seeing these huge wins and we've been able to run and grow with it.
That is awesome. Love the reaction to the shift in market. As we're getting into marketing operations, I'd love to find out about your view on why that might be the unsung hero.
Yes. So marketing operations is the infrastructure that really holds everything together. And so I like to think of it as that glue that pulls in marketing, that pulls in sales, that oftentimes pulls in customer services, the tech people, the developers, whoever needs to be pulled in to really get everything together. A lot of the times, I'll say that should be foundational work. Sometimes it doesn't happen at the beginning and it has to happen on the back end. But it's that really foundational work for lead routing, attribution, workflows, reporting, the things that you need to really be able to make good data-driven decisions. And so you're not flying blind.
Do you think there's a common view held that comes straight out of the box? Or why is it misunderstood that marketing operations is its own thing?
Yeah, great question. So I think whenever you say comes out of the box, I think oftentimes we just assume that these teams either will work together or one tool that kind of ties them all together is going to make it happen. But really, there is that human piece of the puzzle where you need a marketing operations professional or a director of revenue, somebody high up to really say, we need to tie all of this together. We need to loop in leadership and make sure that they have visibility. We need to make sure that marketing is bringing the right leads to sales and tracking that and understanding that. And we need to make sure that sales is selling and then getting customer service that information. There's so much back end work that needs to happen that it really ends up needing to be its own defined role.
You think that that role's success is based on systems management and understanding how the business and its go-to-market ties together internally so as to make this work?
Yeah, 100%. So this is not a one size fits all thing. And that's why a lot of times in my own sales process, I'm going up against other HubSpot agencies. And I struggle to call myself an agency because really I function as a fractional embedded part of a marketing or sales or both team.
Mm.
And to your point, I think that's so important because this work is not one size fits all. You really have to deep dive into what are we selling? Who are we selling it to? What messaging do they need to hear? Where are they hanging out? How can we speak to them correctly? There's so much back end that needs to happen to understand what you need from your sales process. And then you're able to build the systems, the tech, the tools to support that.
I love that. From your own personal point of view, we tend
Yeah.
to think of marketing as brand and campaigns and outreach and demand gen and conversions. What is it about the ops side that inspires you?
Yeah. So I've always been super, super ROI driven. I mean, whenever I shared my origin story with you, your first question, I was like, my clients weren't seeing the results that they needed, and I had to figure
Mm,
out how to get them those results. And so I always
mm.
struggled with calling myself like a true traditional marketer because it was really hard for me to do the branding, the content just for the sake of like sounding nice and looking pretty. To me, I always was focused on revenue. I'm very financially driven, right? I think all entrepreneurs are. You have to be to succeed in this world. And so that's really my sweet spot in my own business with my clients is understanding those numbers and doing that backwards math to say, where are you at from a revenue standpoint? Where do you want to be from a revenue standpoint? What is your average close rate? What's your average order value? How many leads do we need to bring in order to make all of this happen? And really doing that backwards math to understand here's what marketing needs to contribute, here's what sales needs to contribute so that we can hit these growth and revenue goals.
So you've got this financial mindedness, you've got this systems mindset, you're ROI driven, you're data driven, and you've got all this exposure and experience coming into businesses of all shapes and sizes. As you step in and either going through some type of, let's say, a HubSpot audit maybe, or as you're assessing the lay of the land, what are some of the most common mistakes that you're finding within either HubSpot platforms or in go-to-market teams?
Yeah, great question. The number one is dirty data. I see it all day, every day. It looks different for different teams, but it all boils down to the same thing. Oftentimes they'll say we don't trust the data that's in HubSpot.
Mm,
Oftentimes that looks like email deliverability issues because we're sending to, email addresses that we haven't vetted. Oftentimes that ends up showing up in the HubSpot bill of we're paying for all of these contacts that we're not using because we don't know which contacts are good and which contacts are bad. So we just keep them all in the CRM. So that is a huge mistake that I see all the time. Another mistake that I see, I always say HubSpot is an incredibly robust tool, which is a blessing and a curse. So oftentimes I see clients in one of two boats. Either they are barely scraping the surface in HubSpot. So they have this amazing, robust tool and they're using it as a glorified, email marketing platform. They're sending a newsletter, they're sending some sales emails, they're just not using it to its full capacity. Or the flip side of that is I've bit off way more than I can chew. And I'm trying to use all of the bells and whistles inside HubSpot. And now I'm overwhelmed. I'm not actually using any of them correctly or appropriately. And I don't really know what's going on. So I generally see clients falling in one of those two buckets. And really, the ideal case is we crawl, walk, run, right? Let's start by utilizing the features that are going to get you the strongest ROI that you need right now. And then let's allow HubSpot to grow with you and continue to onboard to new features and roll out new campaigns and become a more robust sales, marketing, revenue operations organization.
You tend to find a potential difference in who owns HubSpot within a company? And do you need to have robust discussions around who's going to own this to ensure clean data and the systems are in place and are actively reviewed over time?
Yeah, 100%. Oftentimes, there is one human being who owns HubSpot, and it depends. Sometimes that's a marketing person. Oftentimes, that's a marketing person. Sometimes it's more of a RevOps director role. But what I see a lot is they leave the company, and
Mm.
now somebody new has come in. And oftentimes, it's not even that HubSpot is a mess. It's just that, like I said earlier, HubSpot can be customized so much to meet your needs that if you don't understand what's happening in there, it can appear to be a mess to you. And then you have to understand, do I rebuild? Do I jump in and try to understand all of these jumbled workflows and custom properties and all of these things? And so that's why not only setting up these systems and processes is important, but also documentation and full team onboarding and buy-in. The other side of that is oftentimes, again, I usually see HubSpot being owned by the marketing team more so than the sales team. And we need to be onboarding our sales reps to HubSpot because if marketing is living in HubSpot and we don't have that closed loop reporting to understand what's happening with these leads, what's happening with these deals? Are they closing? Are they not closing? Are they big deals? Are they small deals? Then we cannot be as effective as we need to be. We need to have both teams actively working in HubSpot so we can have that closed loop reporting.
In that scenario, do you think that it becomes marketing's responsibility to train sales? Or what's the best scenario there?
That's a good question. I mean, I think best case scenario is you bring in an expert, whether that's a fractional expert, someone like me, or whether that is more of a leadership role, like a director of revenue operations, a head of revenue, a chief revenue officer, whatever title you want to give that person. But I think it needs to be somebody who can speak to and play to both sides. I don't think it should
Mm.
be marketing, training, sales.
Mhm.
I think it
Mm.
has to be somebody who's one step removed, whether that is, i.e., leadership or somebody who comes in as a fractional consultant to be able to speak to marketing and speak to sales and understand the pain points, understand their roles, and then be able to bring that together into a cohesive strategy that works for everybody.
That really resonates with me, particularly when the knowledge has left the business and it's been taken over and it's being used because it's just always has been, but it's only within one part of the business. Bringing the outside ability to guide it forward, I think, is fantastic. Let's say you're stepping into the business to help unify all of the go-to-market teams onto HubSpot. Marketing's been using it. Sales hasn't been. In what ways would you talk to sales team members about how they benefit and stand to gain from changing habits and transforming the way that they track deal flow inside HubSpot's deals?
Yeah. So, the first thing that I will say is a lot of this is able to happen in the background for you. So, sales teams often get intimidated whenever I come in and I say, you have to onboard to this new tool, you have to start using a CRM. But the truth of the matter is, a lot of the work that I do is setting up their calendar, setting up their email. So that a lot of their outreach and their work can be being tracked in the background so that they don't have to constantly be inside HubSpot tracking all of these things, jotting all of these things down. A lot of the sequences that my team will set up will actually help them do outreach again in the background so that they can really focus on prospecting and relationship building and true selling. So I always like to come in and position it in that way because really we are here to A, help the sales team and save them time. A lot of people will come to me and just tell me, I feel like I need to hire more salespeople. My sales team is maxed out and we're not getting as many sales as we need to. And I always caution them before you hire more salespeople, it might make sense to invest in CRM, automation, sales enablement so that your salespeople can work in a better way. So that's first and foremost. But then from an actual salesperson standpoint, how does it benefit them? The visibility is huge because, again, with some of these new products that we're talking about, I know, Jeremy, you work with a lot of teams who are a new product into the market. And so with that, a lot of times we don't have a deep understanding of the sales cycle. And you have a lot of pressure from leadership to sell, sell, sell. But that sales cycle might take longer than we originally anticipated. When you have a tool like HubSpot, you're able to really showcase that in a data driven way. So you're able to say, here's all the outreach that I've been doing. Here's what it's resulted in. Here's the average time it takes from initial outreach all the way to close deal so that you can build that and really sell that to leadership so they can better understand your role and take some of that pressure off, especially in a brand new market.
I really appreciate the way that you're articulating that, particularly because despite HubSpot being fairly mature at this point and in the market, and they're advancing very fast with especially this year with the different directions they've taken with AI enablement within the system. But there's still, I find, a view in the market that HubSpot is the CRM and that HubSpot is just the tool, as you were talking about. But you're articulating that this is so much more than CRM administration. How do you educate and upsell that internally within a business to leadership who are made up of non-marketing executives?
It really is an all-in-one tool. So the visibility is the biggest ROI that you get from HubSpot. So
Mhm.
as soon as, marketing puts out a campaign, that's in HubSpot. You can see all the data on that campaign. That campaign starts converting leads. All of those leads are in HubSpot, and that handoff to sales is seamless because sales can immediately open up that contact record and understand exactly where that lead came from, what marketing messaging they've seen so that they can understand what attracted them and how to start to have that sales conversation, right? A lot of times, whenever we're talking about a go to market strategy, we have several campaigns running, we have several different pain points. We're kind of, for lack of a better term, throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what will stick. So, whenever sales can come in and really understand this is the ad they saw that converted them. Okay, here's the specific pain point that they are suffering from. Let me use that in the sales cycle to better sell to them. And then, of course, from a leadership perspective, to have all of that visibility is just amazing. You can understand exactly what marketing's doing, how many leads they're driving, how they're being passed off to sales, what sales is doing with those leads, and you can understand where those holes and bottlenecks are, what's working, what's not working, what we can double down on, what we can cut. There's so much data in there from a leadership perspective that just helps you get ahead.
Tell me a bit more about what it's like with leaders who originally understand, hey, we need to do something, but they don't really understand what's possible. And they go through a process of working with you, and you start unifying teams and centralizing data, and they're getting more visibility. Tell me a bit more around once they start seeing what is possible at a foundation, what's the response like, and then B, where do they like to take things next in their excitement for what's possible?
Yeah. The momentum that we're able to build whenever we have all of this data is just unparalleled. So, whenever I'm able to come in and say, here's exactly what's working from a sales and revenue standpoint, and here's exactly what's not working, let's cut all of this out and move all of our efforts over to these campaigns that are working, these outreach sequences that are working. That is huge. That's second to none. And so that really is the biggest driver. I'll give you an example. I was working with a client in 2024. They came to me and it was a very similar story to what I was sharing earlier. They were like, our sales team is maxed out, but we have big growth goals. We have big revenue goals. And we don't know what we need to be doing. They originally came to me as a marketing agency. They were like, I think we need more marketing. I think we need more leads. And I was like, okay, great. Let's take a step back. I was able to assess everything that they have going on in HubSpot. And I was able to figure out exactly, like I was saying before, which campaigns were working well for them, which pain points were resonating with that target audience. And then we were able to build outreach sequences because they had all of this data in HubSpot. Again, I wouldn't quite call it dirty data in their case, but they had this huge CRM full of leads and they didn't really know where these people had come from, right? This is a company that is 20 plus years old. They didn't know who was marketing to these people. They just kind of had all these contacts sitting in there and their sales team was maxed out. So we were able to come in and build these outreach sequences, start nurturing all of these contacts that were already in their database. And those contacts started replying to those nurturing sequences. We immediately passed them off to sales, and it ended up resulting in an extra $1 million in revenue for them in 2024, just from those sequences alone. So, just from that background work that we were doing on the salespeople's behalf.
That's incredible. And it really goes to show the power of, well, firstly, follow up, but secondly, understanding what is already in your sphere. I think often teams are just so focused on net new that they don't understand what is already within their opportunity sitting in their database.
Definitely. Yeah, I think we live in this instant gratification culture, right? Where we just immediately want something to happen. And I think oftentimes as salespeople, we fall trapped to that, where we try to sell, it doesn't work out for whatever reason, and then we just consider them, a dead lead. And oftentimes that's not the case. Oftentimes that need is still there. It just wasn't the right time. They didn't have the budget, whatever. But if we continue to nurture and speak to them and check in with them, enroll them in our outreach campaigns, that's all potential revenue that's just sitting in your CRM, not being touched.
I'm going to get personal for a sec. My absolute unequivocal favorite part of HubSpot is lead scoring. Tell me
Yes.
about how you approach lead scoring with sales teams and marketing teams.
Yeah, great question. So, lead scoring, again, is very, very personal. So, it is not a one size fits all, which I think is what makes it so great. And it's really twofold, in my opinion. There is the fit piece of the puzzle, right? So, we're talking industry, job title, size of company, whatever. Are they the right fit? But then the other piece that I think often gets forgotten is intent. So, how
Mm.
many times have they visited your website? Are they interacting with your email campaigns? Are they clicking on your ad campaigns? What's going on with these people? Are they showcasing intent? And so, whenever you pair those two, it becomes a really magical way to lead score. And kind of like what we were talking about before, if we're lead scoring all of the contacts in your CRM, you would be shocked at the ones that will just randomly jump to the top, right? Somebody you haven't talked to in sometimes years will all of a sudden, they were a good fit. Maybe you tried to sell to them years ago, it didn't work out. But when we have not only fit, but also intent as a part of our lead scoring, once they start interacting again, oh, they've been on our website 5 times this week. Oh, they're clicking on our emails all of a sudden. Oh, they're interacting with our social campaigns, whatever it is. Now they've jumped to the top of the list, and we can tell sales, hey, let's prioritize this person. Let's reach out to them. Let's give them a call. Let's reconnect, have lunch with them, whatever it is, because they're thinking about this.
Absolutely. Tell me about how, and I'm asking this because it's always hotly debated. What's your view on ascribing scores to actions or activities? And this is where I've seen lots of discussion around, should this be 1 point? Should that be 3 points? Should that be keen to understand what's your view on assigning scores to actions?
Yeah. When you say actions, do you mean like what I was saying with like email opens?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So how much is an email open worth against content download, against attended a webinar?
Yeah, great question. So again, I think this is going to vary company to company. And this is where if you're using your CRM, your HubSpot appropriately, you can look back on that data. So you can say, let's pull our top 20 deals from this year so far, and let's look and see what did those people interact with. And then we can use that data to then inform our future data. So that's how I generally do it. I don't think that there's a one size fits all. Of course, we can generally say top of the funnel activities, middle of the funnel activities, bottom of the funnel activities, right? Clicking on a social post is not going to weigh as high as viewing the request a quote page. But also, to your point, I think that we can tie in some of those deeper marketing pieces, even specific webinars. Maybe it's not a one size fits all for webinars, but this webinar actually scores higher than this webinar because we know that our top sales from last year all watched this one webinar.
Totally. I find it so powerful in that, as you were talking before about activities taking place behind the scenes, enabling sales and non-marketing execs to understand that activities taking place without leads being spoken to or particularly individually pursued in a ABM style campaign, but activities taking place that you're currently not monitoring. And the lead scoring, to my mind, really shifts marketing operations and HubSpot into that revenue enablement, because the conversations they start having based on those lead scoring means, as you said, sales teams speaking to hand raisers, to people who are showing intent, and it is so deeply powerful.
Yeah. And what a dream as a salesperson, right? Like, you don't want to be talking to the people who have never heard of you and having to hard sell them when you
Yeah,
could have a plate of warm leads just served to you who have been on your website 5 times this week and are just dying to pick up your call.
absolutely. It's so phenomenal. This is a really good point. You've said this before, and you were alluding to it early. The statement, tools aren't strategy. Tell me more about.
Yes. So it's so important to have a strategy in place before you try to bring in your tools. And it's also so important to customize your tools to meet your strategy. So,
Mm,
yes, you can use HubSpot outside of the box. Companies do it. It works kind of, but if you want to really grow your business and have a sophisticated sales and marketing program, it's so important to first figure out your sales and marketing strategy outside of any tools, and then purchase the tools. I even worry about saying tools because I think it's so easy to kind of hope for a magic pill and purchase all of these different tools. So really try to create a lean tech stack that is customized to exactly meet what your team needs in order to market and sell in the best way that they can.
Do you find yourself involved in that process, or are you tending to come into an organization where they've already made the decision on the tools and you're assessing, okay, well, where to from here based on whether those tools are being used or not and whether there's a strategy in place or not?
It's honestly a mixture of both. It just
Okay.
depends. I work on both sides of the fence. I think it depends on the age of the company, it depends on their level of sophistication and their needs. But both can happen as long as we're leading with strategy. If you already have a tool and it needs to be optimized to meet your strategy, great. If you have a strategy and you're trying to figure out what tool to onboard to that strategy, also great. I think the messiness comes into play when you have a tool and no strategy and you're just trying to use that tool without first understanding how do we market and how do we sell to our customer.
Is that where you would start if the tools there, and we'll start with the second example, the tools there, this is a HubSpot customer, they've onboarded, they're doing stuff, but they also recognize shortcomings. How do you advise them to start? Is it strategy first always?
Yeah. So sometimes it's just a matter of documenting the strategy that they already have in place and
Okay.
not over complicating it. I will also say, I think it's really exciting when you have a robust and complex tool like HubSpot to do all the things and use all the bells and whistles. But admittedly, that's usually not the best way to go about it. Usually, keeping it simple is the best way to onboard your team to it, to make it work for you. And then once your team is using it regularly, we can optimize and we can iterate. But I think a stumbling block that happens a lot is, oh, we can have 10 deal stages, so we should have 10 deal stages, right? Like, let's put every possible outcome that could ever happen with this deal into the pipeline. And then things get really messy. And then we wonder, why isn't the sales team adopting this? Why don't we have clean data? We start asking ourselves all of these questions. And if we keep it simple from the beginning, have them on board, have them start using it, and then have regular check ins where we say what's working, what's not working, we can always add and iterate on that.
Yeah, I love the focus on simplicity. Um, okay, number of deal stages. Are there other signs of where a company's over-engineered their process or their HubSpot?
Custom properties is another one I see all day
Okay.
long. We have
Mm,
just a million properties in HubSpot. Some of them are duplicate. I was in a portal earlier today where we had industry and then we had industry name. Those were two different properties. Like, why are we doing this? So I see that all the time, and oftentimes that can stem from what we talked about before, where somebody else used to own HubSpot, somebody new came in, and now they're just re-engineering everything. Or a lot of times that stems from we created a form for an event that we had years ago, and we had all these custom properties for the form, but now we've never used that form again. We've never had that event again, and they're all just still living in HubSpot, taking up space, confusing our team. And so that's another one that I see all the time.
yeah, yeah. I wonder if there's a over-engineering of admin as well, potentially. Do you see where in the exuberance of wanting to control sales teams that they suffer as a result of having too many tasks being generated within the portal for each contact?
Yeah, definitely. Oftentimes it can stem from that. Oftentimes you just need to make cleanup a priority.
Yeah.
And sometimes that means outsourcing it as well and working with, a company who specializes in that or a consultant, a team that can help you with that. I know with all of our client retainers, we have regular data cleanup on a weekly basis just to make sure, because sales and marketing leaders admittedly should not be cleaning up data, right? Like their brains should be going to much bigger things. So if that means outsourcing that, if that means just adding it to your to-do list every Monday, We have workflows in place for all of our clients to catch kind of the thing that regularly happen for them. It's all unique to them, but yeah, it's data cleanup is a beast, but if you can get your portal to a good place and then have honestly weekly check-ins where you're regularly cleaning, it saves you so much headache in the long run, and it really does make everything just so much better. A, your HubSpot bill is lower. You're not paying for a bunch of stuff that you don't need. B, your sales team and your marketing team feels incredibly confident in your data. They can open up a record, they can understand what's happening, they can reach out to them. They're not worried, is this the wrong phone number? Is this the wrong email? Is this person even still at this company? Like, we're not dealing with any of that. We're just truly doing our job selling.
That's really good advice. You mentioned earlier in the conversation around lead passing from marketing to sales and having that handover process. How do you get the handover right such that there isn't pushback from sales, that marketing's just shifting life cycle stages arbitrarily, that these are meaningful leads?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a variety of different ways that we can go about that. One, which I know you brought up, is lead scoring. So lead scoring is fantastic if we can point to a specific data point to say this is why they are in your court because they have hit these criteria that we have mutually agreed upon, right? If we can get sales and marketing in the same room and say, what does an amazing sales qualified lead look like? Great, let's document that. Let's get it out there. That's always a huge win in my book.
Mm.
The other piece is some of those automated outreach campaigns. So a lot of times if we don't have automation and outreach campaigns into place, we run into that problem where marketing says, okay, like hot potato, this one looks like it's ready. Let's pass it off to sales. And then sales is going, I don't know, this one's not like really ready. And there's no middle ground. And so those outreach campaigns can be a really beautiful middle ground where in an automated way, the salesperson is reaching out to that lead and they're being nurtured through the system. But the salesperson themselves is not doing any manual work to reach out to that lead.
Yeah, fascinating. Because that would immediately, I think, shut down this whole, we've had 200 downloads of our ebook. These are 200 SQLs. And sales is saying, they've never heard of us. They don't know, they don't even remember downloading this. What are we supposed to do with this? And it sounds like your process has an engagement phase to further qualify as effectively the handover, it sounds like.
Definitely. I want sales teams selling. Maybe a little prospecting, right? We'll do a little prospecting and we'll do a lot of selling. All of that middle ground, like, let me take that off your plate. You should not be doing outreach. You should not be doing nurturing. You should not be doing these touch points, these check-ins. All of that should be happening in the background for you.
That's got to sound like music to some of these teams. Awesome. Hey, you mentioned before around tools and next shiny object. I think you used the phrase a magic tool. Do you think that within a HubSpot that there is this continued looking for other plugins to drop in, third-party tools, and that there's this constant ballooning of types of tools that are plugged into the HubSpot that have been over-engineered?
I think it happens, yes. I think it happens less with HubSpot than it does with other CRMs. So HubSpot is such a robust tool. And I hate calling it a CRM because it's a CRM, it's marketing automation, it's customer service, it's your CMS, right? It's all of these things. It's its own beast. But because it does so much, I think there is less of a need for integration than oftentimes if you're using other tools or if you're using a separate CRM, a separate marketing automation tool, a separate CMS, and they're not all speaking to each other. However, it does happen. and I definitely see it. A lot of times it comes from a lack of education. So if you bring in someone who doesn't know HubSpot super well, but they know other marketing, sales, service tools, their default is let me use the tools that I know and integrate them with HubSpot. Sometimes that works, sometimes it gets clunky. I will say HubSpot has an amazing app ecosystem. You're able to see which are certified by HubSpot, which are not certified by HubSpot. You can see reviews of other people who have integrated those apps. And so you can understand what the gaps are, what's working, what's not working. So they set you up for success as best they can, but of course, it absolutely happens where, sometimes you walk into a portal and it's speaking to everything and it doesn't need to be.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Especially when the foundation isn't even rock solid yet.
Yeah, exactly. Right. If we're not utilizing all the tools that HubSpot has to offer, then I really struggle with integrating brand new tools and making them now speak to HubSpot. It just, yeah, it gets very messy very quick.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, there's been a massive shift within HubSpot and their own go-to-market around their AI integration and enablement. And I guess that reflects the broader market as well and the broader conversation that's happening in the market. For teams that are asking you about AI and HubSpot, how do you respond?
Yeah. I think it's all about staying ahead and understanding the AI tools, knowing what they do. But I think just like we talked about with the integrations, we have to be really strategic about which AI tools we're onboarding to and why. And having that rock solid sales and marketing strategy in place and using that as our North Star to say, is this a bright, shiny object that we're excited about testing out? Or is this AI tool something that is truly going to help move the needle toward our previously defined revenue goals, towards our previously defined sales and marketing goals? Just like all really AI tools right now, everything needs to be double checked. Everything needs to be run through some kind of quality assurance. I don't feel incredibly confident in any of these AI tools right now. Everything needs to be walked through a human, right? If we're having AI write your webpage for you, I think that's an amazing place to start. I don't think that we should immediately push publish. If we're having AI enrich your data for you, I think that's amazing. But let's take a peek at it. Let's give it a gut check. Does that make sense? Is that where that company is headquartered? Is that person in that role? Right. We can't just onboard or offboard, excuse me, everything over to AI, which I think it's really easy to do because we're all very busy. And at this point, 9 times out of 10, it produces really great stuff, but it's that 1% chance that it doesn't that can really tarnish your brand or really get you in a sticky situation from a sales standpoint.
Yeah, I think that's really good feedback, particularly in the way that you're describing the state of the data within the business, even in the first instance, not being clean. And I think you were really articulate around the rigor required to keep it clean, that it's not a single project done and dusted. This is an ongoing iterative priority within the business. And if you're plugging AI into dirty data, what is it going to be based on? It's going to be based on what it can find, and it will lead to disastrous outcomes, especially if you're opening it up to the customer or the prospect.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a great call out. I think it's AI, whether it's inside HubSpot, outside of HubSpot, AI is only as good as the prompts or the data that you give it, the information that you give it. And so, in all aspects, again, inside, outside of HubSpot, if you're able to provide AI with really strong data, really strong brand guidelines, really strong insight into what you want, it can produce really amazing results for you. If you want it to be a magic band-aid fix all for you, unfortunately, we're not there yet. Maybe, maybe soon.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll ever at this point. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
thinking of scenarios where RevOps teams get so excited about automating lead sourcing by way of other tools and plugging that into automatic cold email and nurture streams, and then it turns out none of that data was valid anyways, and none of these people work for those companies anymore, and it's just out of control. But it's that magic bullet that keeps people trying to
Yeah.
pursue this.
No, you're so right. Yeah, 100%.
Shifting gears into getting really practical for people, I'm thinking about my business. I'm using HubSpot. I probably know that I'm not getting the most out of it. What's your advice? Where do I start with starting to think seriously about moving into a space where my whole business is running around this platform?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that is really challenging for me to answer because it's not a one size fits all approach. I think it's really important for you to work with a HubSpot expert or deeply understand the tool, take the courses, do the certification, and again, cross reference that with your revenue goals and your strategy to understand which pieces of HubSpot are going to help move the needle the most for me. I do a talk for a lot of groups about setting up your HubSpot CRM and getting started. And I offer a checklist. And I always say, look at this checklist and don't start with the first thing on the list. Review the whole checklist and understand which of these is going to most deeply move the needle for me, right? What is my biggest pain point right now? Is it that I'm not following up with people? Is it that I don't have visibility into my pipeline? Is it that my marketing and sales are not speaking to each other enough? I don't have the integration between my campaigns. Like, what is that big pain point that's really holding you back? Figure out the corresponding HubSpot tool, set that up, get really, really good at that. Onboard your team to it, onboard your content campaigns, whatever it is, fully set it up, feel amazing about it, and then move on to the next thing, right? We don't want to bite off more than we can chew, which is so easy to do with a really robust tool like HubSpot. And so if you can figure out your biggest pain point, figure out exactly what inside HubSpot is going to help with that pain point, set that up and become an expert at that, onboard your team, get amazing at it, then move on to the next thing. That's really my biggest advice for people.
It is incredible advice. It is profound to me because the most common denominator is to have the checklist download and to work your way through, but you're effectively advising to think deeply about what are we trying to do here, and you're really having leaders look to getting through what their inhibitors and challenges are, and then using the tool as an enabler to get your way through that. I think it's very profound.
Thank you.
Jasz, this has been so awesome. I really appreciate the way that you're thinking about this, the way that you're talking about marketing operations, the way that you're really championing its power and its opportunity within businesses. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much. The time has just flown by. This was so much fun. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.